That'll be the last one I say tonight, I promise.
You can have zucchini noodles, they're not bad. Or spaghetti squash.
Yeah, I might have to try that.
It's really not too bad.
See, anytime somebody has to stress to me, it's really not too bad,
bad.
that means it's bad. If you gotta stress it.
She's got,
She's really nice.
the yellow squash noodles are good.
That's like that whole, she's got a great personality, she's psycho. I mean, it's one of those things. Well, tonight we are in Revelation chapter 8. Before we get started, I want to kind of go over something here, because at this point in Revelation, so far we've talked about the premillennial, the postmillennial, the amillennial, and the dispensational views, right? And we've talked about those. So, but now there are two more views that come into play with the book of Revelation. And they are known as the recapitulation view, I think I said that right, and the linear view.
Recapitulation.
Yeah, there we go. I'm going to make you say that now. And so kind of breaking these down, what we have here is, across, I know it's kind of blurry, but it's, so you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 representing the number of seals, the number of trumpets, and the number of bowls or vials of judgment that will happen throughout the book of Revelation. While say it for me, Lou.
Recapitulation.
There we go. That view basically says that it's the same judgments being described over and over in increasing detail. There is that belief. So what they're saying is that the 7 seals start everything off. The 7 trumpets build on the 7 seals. The 7 bowls build on the 7 trumpets. It's just the same judgments happening over and over again. Then there's the linear view, which means that each series of judgments is distinct and issues the next series of judgments, or next series of more intense. Meaning they run together. They run one right after the other. One introduces the next. And which is right?
I don't think we're ever going to.
That's right.
But I'm going to give you my opinion, as I always do. It's the linear view.
Makes sense.
And the reason why for that is, think about this. If you take the tribulation as a 7-year period, or even if you just look at the first 3.5 years, okay? The difference isn't that great between the two views, except the linear view fits the text that we're reading. That's the difference. That's why I believe the linear view is actually more accurate. And so whenever you look at this, if you remember, we've done the first 6 seals. We've done those. We've done the first 6 judgment seals. And we're going to find out when the 7th seal is opened, right here, it unleashes the first of the trumpet judgments. And when the 7th trumpet sounds, it brings on the 7 bowl judgment or vial judgments. So that's my personal belief, that the linear fits best. And so I just wanted you, because like I said, we're trying to look at different views and stuff, so I just want to bring that out, because that is some things whenever, if you try to study this on your own, and which I encourage you to do, I encourage you to not take my word for this, but study this. And you will find that as you study different scholars, one goes with the one view, the other goes with the linear view. So that's, are there any questions on any of that? Do we understand the differences? All right. So if somebody would like to start, we're going to start tonight with these with the trumpet judgments. And if somebody would like to read verses 1 through 6 of chapter 8, this is actually the opening of the 7th seal.
And when he had opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer, And there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense which came with the prayers of the saints ascended up before God out of the angel's hand. And the angel took the censer and filled it with fire out of the altar, and cast it into the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. And the 7 angels which had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound.
Okay. So what you hear is now we're introducing into the trumpet judgments. They're introduced, if you notice, there is actually silence in heaven for about a half an hour. Everything goes quiet. And so that is, let's just call it what it is. Here's our dramatic pause. A very dramatic pause takes place. And then 7 angels prepare to execute God's will. Then another angel takes fire from the altar and casts it to earth, from the heavenly altar, and casts it to earth. The judgment which comes is in response to the prayers of God's people who long for his victory and his righteousness to be manifested. So if we look at verse 4, and you see here, and it says, in the smoke of the incense which came with the prayers of the saints. Let's look at that, the prayers. Those are likely a petition to God, were likely petitions for God to judge evil and to inaugurate his kingdom quickly. And if you would call it like a token judgment, that's kind of what happens in verse 5. You know, we have literally, the angel took the censer filled with fire from the altar and cast it at the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. And it was at that point the 7 angels prepared to sound. So there's kind of like, there's not much revealed here about what, other than that there was thunder and lightning and an earthquake that happened, but there's nothing revealed about death. And a lot of scholars believe that there's no death that's going to happen with that little token judgment, so you want to say, because the wrath of God is coming. This is more like a, hey, pay attention, something's about to happen type of thing. That's taking place right here.
The trumpets they use for sound for war, and it sounds for some of God's things that they did, you know, the Old Testament. That's what it is.
Right.
Bring your attention.
Yep.
It's time. It's coming.
That's right. And that's what's going to take place here. And so now we have the first trumpet. Are there any questions on that intermittent part before the trumpet judgments actually start? All right. So now if somebody would like to read verse 7, this is the first trumpet.
The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth, and the third part of the trees was burnt up, and all green grass was burnt up.
Okay. So I want to put here for verse. Pay attention what's slide on. So in verse 7, I want to kind of put something in here. A lot of stuff that I studied, a lot of scholars that I trust because of the way they talk here and they say a third part of the earth was burned up is what they get at. And the implications there, really, if you think about it, the implications are staggering, and there's no reason not to understand this and the other judgments plainly. Kind of what I'm getting at here is you can put this however you want. You can try and twist it. You can try and take the words that are in these judgments, and you're not going to explain them into a better scenario. Okay, we're talking it's really going to get going here. And so you really can't explain this and make it better for yourself. When the judgments start, they're going to start. And the first trumpet here, think about that. I want you to notice something. The trumpet judgments have similarities to the plagues of judgment which God poured out on Egypt during the time of Israel's Exodus. So if you go back to Exodus chapter 7 through 11, a lot of these trumpet judgments are going to sound familiar.
Right.
They really are. It's almost like God is replaying it.
2 Peter 3:10-12. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat, and the earth also is the works that are therein shall be burned up. Seeing when that all things shall be dissolved, what manner of persons ought ye to be in all holy conversation and godliness, looking for the hastings unto the coming of the day of God, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of like the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Sounds almost exactly like it. And this is what I tell people whenever we start getting into this stuff. Everybody talks about global warming. Well, there's going to be a global warming. You know, it's coming.
It's interesting, though. You look at that verse and it says hail and fire.
Yeah.
Last time I checked, that ain't something I've seen all at the same time. Like
Yeah.
that.
Right. So
And it's big with blood.
And mingled
yeah,
with
and
blood.
mingled with blood. Like, you know, as if hail and fire coming down isn't enough. God says, "Here, let's throw some blood in it too." You know, but now think about this. Like I said, these similarities are right there together with the judgments that were poured out on Israel or on Egypt during the Exodus. But however, the trumpets signal much greater and universal disasters, which are not confined to one nation. Remember, whenever Israel had their Exodus, those judgments were carried out on Egypt.
Yes.
Well, now God is going to carry out His judgment on the world. Now, the purpose is similar: to warn, to punish, and to bring people to repentance and faith. Hail, fire, and blood come to earth. Many understand. Now here's where a lot of people think. A lot of people go, "Oh, well, fire, that's just lightning." No. I've seen fire, I've seen lightning, and they are not the same thing. And if the Bible tells me that fire is falling from heaven, fire is falling from heaven. But a lot of people, yeah. But a lot of people try to say, "Well, that's just lightning." No. Now, mingled with blood, many people take that as like a blood red rain, which actually does occur in places of volcanic activity or near the red sands from the Sahara Desert. So that, to some people, says, "Oh, well, that's just normal nature taking place." No, it says it's mingled with blood.
That's right.
Okay, so, like I said, you can try to explain this stuff to make it a little bit better, but you're not going to be able to.
Right.
You have to, you always hear that, take the totality of the Bible together.
Mm-hmm.
When God intended in His Bible for things to be like it, He said like.
Right.
When He describes heaven, like of this, like of that,
Yep.
it's not there. It doesn't say like,
Doesn't say it.
doesn't say similar to like lightning.
Right.
It says what it says, and it is what it is.
That's right. So what we get here is the result of the first trumpet judgment is the destruction of a third of the earth's vegetation. Very simply put, a third of the earth's vegetation is destroyed. Now, think about this. This will greatly affect humanity's food supply.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Now, what did we just get out of in the sealed judgments? A great famine, right? Well, now you're going to have a third of the earth's vegetation is going to be wiped out in the first trumpet.
One of the things I wonder about that when I read that, I think about something that Lou just said about Sodom and Gomorrah.
Mhm.
And we talk about how, what we're doing in our country today. You hear people, preachers, and people always say, how are we going to be any better than Sodom and Gomorrah? It says a third. It does not say spread out across the world a third.
Right.
I wonder if it's not going to be specific places.
I think in the Middle East, where it started, where it's bad.
So there are two different beliefs on that. There are that belief that it's going to be certain areas. Others say that it will be around the whole earth. But remember, we've also had, what are we up to now? A fourth and then a fourth after that of Earth's population has been wiped out. So there's kind of a split thought there of, is it the earth in its entirety, or is it just in one specific section? But I think as we go through, we'll find out maybe a little bit more in that as we get into these other, the next three actually trumpets.
It's still not just gonna affect the food supply, it's gonna affect the air too.
Right.
Because
Oh, yeah.
most of the air gets its oxygen
Yep.
from these plants. And,
Also,
Animals are
United
going to die,
States.
which are food to many people.
the United States feeds most of the world.
Yep.
The biggest portion. If it wiped the United States out, there would be a famine.
Well, you
You
look
wouldn't
at,
be able to hold.
you know, you're kind of describing it, you know, you could look at it like a volcanic, you
Yes.
know, fallout from the ash
Mhm.
too. And what did that do to the whole climate? It
Yeah.
made everything colder, everything darker. It would wipe out the plant life that's still available. It would hurt it.
You know, look at
So-
Mount St. Helens.
So it's funny you said volcano. We'll skip ahead here a little bit. There was in August 27th, 1883, in Indonesia, there was a volcano. It was called Krakatoa.
Krakatoa.
Yeah, Krakatoa. I love you names. Now, when it exploded, it didn't erupt. It was actually recorded in history as an explosion.
Right.
And what happened was nearly 5 cubic miles of rock and dust were thrown into the air. So picture that. And whenever that got thrown into the air, the surrounding region was dark for 2.5 days. The surrounding region. And dust drifted around the earth several times, causing a bright red sunset for over a year. That's how massive of it. And I thought that was kind of funny because I had this down here because I said something similar may happen in this series of judgments. It might be something similar to that type of an effect, but that it could be regionalized, but it'll in turn affect the whole earth. And when you started talking about volcano, I went, I got that here.
Did I get ahead of you?
No. That was going to be one of the things I was going to close with, but it tied right in. So, no, you did not. I'm not giving you that
That's my
victory.
goal.
The waters too, remember that.
Hold on, don't get ahead of me. Hold up.
I'm just glad we'll be gone.
Right.
Amen.
Amen.
But that, he is,
Yeah.
for 2,000 years, he's prepared the world.
Exactly.
Yep. They failed.
Yeah. So are there any other questions on the first trumpet? Because I want to get to this second and third before Howard ruins number 2 and number 3 for me.
Okay.
All right, if somebody would like to read verses 8 and 9, this is the second trumpet.
And the second angel sounded, and as it were, a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea. And the third part of the sea became blood. And the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died. And the third part of the ships were destroyed.
All right. As the second trumpet sounds, I want you to notice here, it says, as it were a great mountain burning. This is saying something like a great mountain burning. So this is that descriptive again. Something like a gigantic, now some people say, compare this could possibly be something like a giant meteor. Because the way the description is. I mean, John records it as a great mountain burning. So some people say it could be something like a meteor.
Or a volcano.
Or a volcano, exactly. But it crashes into the sea, and a third of the sea turns to blood. Doesn't become as blood, it turns to blood. Exodus chapter 7 verse 20 is a similar. A third of the sea life dies, a third of the world's shipping is destroyed. Now, I want you to think about this. Much of the world today depends on food supplies from other parts of the world. And how do they transport it? By the sea. Slow boat to China.
Yeah.
So think about the terrible economic disasters and suffering that will take place because of that. The impact of this judgment on the world's economy, if you were to think about it, is beyond all imagination. We can't imagine, if you remember back, I'm trying to think, it was somewhere between 2000 and 2004, I was in high school. The dock workers went on strike. Remember that?
Yes.
And there were some issues with that, wasn't there? Because we had food and stuff coming in from overseas, imports were taking place, exports were trying to take place, and they couldn't get anything out because the dock workers were on strike, boats were not getting loaded. That's nothing compared to this.
And the stuff was rotting on the docks. I do
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah, stuff was rotting on the dock. That was one country. We're talking a third of all ships get destroyed. Your economy is going to suffer when this takes place.
One ship will hold several hundred tons of food.
Right.
You take 1/3 of all the ships.
Think about the United States Navy has a specific fleet that is nothing but aid. That's all they are. I believe they're tied to, I think they call them merchant marines, ain't it? Is that what they're tied to? Is that merchant marines?
The merchant marines, it could be partially that. They also are often the people that go in and build a land base for the Marines coming in a military offensive.
But I know that they have.
They've got a number of different things
Right.
that they do, and I'm not sure what it all is.
And so we have these ships, and you can tell this ship if you ever see one at sea. It's not a typical Navy vessel. It is an all-white vessel with the Red Cross on it and all this stuff. Basically, so they're identified they're a peaceful ship. So those type of things will be destroyed in this as well.
Like I say,
If,
often those are disguised ships.
yeah. But also you have to go by this. See, we're talking about the stuff the U.S. does and how the U.S. impacts the economy and the imports and the exports. If you believe the U.S. is still here at this point.
That's right.
There is a wildly popular belief that when the seal judgments are taken out, when those happen, the U.S. is no longer around.
Right.
They are part of that fourth of the earth.
Yellowstone.
Yellowstone, exactly.
Yeah, and they say it's building up.
Right. So there's that too. We have to understand there is a lot of scholars agree from this point on there's no evidence of the U.S. But that's man trying to also
Explain it.
right.
Remember too, when this stuff all starts happening, everybody is going to be for themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody is good, you know. Even if we were still here, we
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be sending nothing to nobody.
Right. Yeah. Your imports, your exports are shut off at that point.
And I've thought to myself, this is a third of the fish and whatnot that's going to die. Can you imagine the smell that's going to come as all a third of the...
You know, something like this, the EMP, you know, if
Yep.
you're talking about this kind of stuff.
Right.
Everything that runs off of a circuit board, which is everything, is dead.
Right.
No food, no power, no electric, gas, nothing. It's
Yep.
all done. Ships, planes, trains, gone.
With a strong enough EMP, you can wipe out every satellite.
Modern day automobiles all run on computer.
Yeah, everything.
Everything.
Refrigeration in the stores,
Yep.
all
They say-
computerized.
They say that 25% of people would die in the first
You think of all the medicines that need refrigerated.
There's also, you're talking about, they say 25% of the people will die in the first few months. There's actually a belief that death is not happening here.
Right.
Because, well, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
We'll get to
Getting ahead of
that.
ourselves again. See what happens, go down.
There is that belief as well. So are there any questions on the second trumpet? All right, so we'll move on to the third. If somebody would like to read verses 10 and 11.
And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers, and upon the fountains of water. And the name of the star is called Wormwood. And the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter.
Please don't think the sun just fell into the earth right here.
No.
That is not what this is saying. A lot of people take this verse, and when they hear a great star from heaven burning as it were a lamp, a lot of people think the sun has fallen in. Not what's taking place.
The big things flying around in space.
Right.
And when
Exactly.
they enter the atmosphere, they become flammable.
That's
If
exactly
it
it.
was the sun, it would be bigger than the earth to begin with.
Yep.
So the earth falls.
Exactly. It would have to shrink down. So another heavenly body comes crashing down. This star, a lot of people think it's another meteorite, is named Wormwood for its effects on the inland waters and great rivers. All the water is polluted at this point. It's polluted, but it's not polluted. Now let me explain that. It's polluted, but not. If you study wormwood, you'll find that many species of wormwood, which is nothing more than a woody herb, grows in Palestine. And all have a strong, bitter taste, but it's not poisonous.
Right. You know,
Okay.
Chinova.
Yeah.
That was called wormwood.
Yep.
Well, the Chinese, I think back in sometime in the 1990s, say they saw a star that is coming towards the Earth that should probably land somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean in the early 2020s or into the early 30s.
Right.
So, and they named it in the Chinese language wormwood.
Yeah, they still,
Yep.
they still, from Chinova, they still have earth and water contaminated.
Right. Yep. So it has a bitter taste, which causes the plant to be used as a symbol of bitterness, sorrow, and calamity. Okay? Now this plague will make a third part of the fresh water supply unfit for human consumption. Unfit. And what does it say here? Many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. Now, there's also I think it's I'm trying to think. Oh, what was that thing we went to whenever we were in Kenmore that Phil did? Yeah, the Passover. There we go. We actually partook in one of those. And there is actually a very bitter plant. I believe it's actually wormwood, or it's supposed to be if you do it the traditional sense. Wormwood, and the reason for that bitterness is to remind you of your sins.
Mm-hmm.
Think about what God is doing here. A third of the fresh water supply becomes bitter to remind people of their sins, if you look at it along that sense. God is still, in all of this, trying to convey a message to reach the lost. Do we understand that? We're not at the point where salvation has ceased to happen. God is still allowing opportunities. And he's showing people that they're in there. He's showing people they are in sin. Now, God does it today. God shows us, if we're honest with ourselves, we would have never got saved if God wouldn't have revealed to us that we were in sin.
That's right.
Right? I'm just thankful that it didn't have to go to this extreme to get my attention. See, now God is to the point where He's making things of this earth go away to get people's attention. And in all this, people will die, but people are going to get saved.
Yes.
People are going to come to know Christ. Are there any questions on this third trumpet? What a lot of people say is the fresh waters being smitten.
No, but I can say, if you've ever been over in Hancock County, around Finley and some of those areas, and if you drank well water straight out of the well, it's sulfur water, and it is terrible. It stinks like crazy, even just to get it up. This is gonna make that look like sweet.
Yeah.
Very nice cup of sweet tea or something.
That's right. That's right. All right. So if somebody would like to read, we'll go to the fourth trumpet. And if somebody would like to read verse 12, this is the fourth trumpet.
And the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, so as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise.
All right. So with the blowing of the fourth trumpet, the Egyptian plague of darkness is recalled. Think back to Exodus chapter 10, verses 21 through 23. Okay? That plague is being recalled. The sun, the moon, and the stars lose a third of their luminosity. Some both day and night. That's one point of view. There are two. So some believe that things will be shortened. The days and the nights will be shortened. There's actually a great belief out there that a lot of people think the 24-hour day was shortened to 16 hours. There's that view. That the time frame will be shortened. Or that just the power of the light that they give off will be reduced by a third. There is a split thought here on how it reads. And whenever you look at it, it says, but when I look at it, it says the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon was smitten, third part of the stars was smitten. Spitting or smitten. So as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. So whenever you look at that, honestly, I can see both sides of it. Mm-hmm. You really can.
Kind of.
You can kind of see both.
Maybe it is both.
There's that very good possibility. It could be both. Go ahead, Dennis.
Jesus, he said in Matthew 24:29, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. He's already told us.
Right. And you're going to find that.
Yeah.
You're going to find that a lot. Jesus already told us all this in his earthly ministry when he was here. He gave people a warning that this stuff was going to happen. So whenever you look at that, the judgment of darkness is to warn the world to flee to Christ. We're not saying come to him now. We're saying flee to him. Mm-hmm. Flee to Christ. And why is that? Why would he say that? Think about, what does John chapter 8 verse 12 tell us? He has come as a light into the world. Mm-hmm. See, the great tragedy is that people often stay in dark because their practices are evil. But the final destiny of the rebellious is a place of utter darkness. If you stay in darkness, your eternity is darkness. I mean, there's no easier way to put that. But I really like how that tied together, because if we do see that the earth comes to a point where darkness is longer, so they're going to need a light. And people will flee to Jesus. They're going to realize that they're in a dark place, physically and spiritually.
Yes.
That they are in a very dark place. And there's only one that can deliver them out of it. Now it's a shame that it gets to that point. That God has to go to that point to get somebody's attention. But didn't He do that with each and every one of us?
Yes.
He may not have physically taken a third of the power of the sun away, a third of the power of the moon away to put us in a dark world, but He showed us that we were in a dark place. Did He not? And whenever we were in that dark place, didn't we flee to the light as quick as possible once we realized it? Because He showed us in our sins we were in a dark place and that our eternity was going to be a dark place. And the thing that we wanted to get away from was that darkness. And the only way away from that darkness was we had to get to Christ and get to Him as quickly as possible. That is what it's going to happen here. People are going to get there, but not everyone. We have to understand that still. Even in these days, when God's power is on full display, still not everybody will come to know salvation. We will get to a point in our studies as we go through this that people will actually curse God for doing it. That's how bad it's going to get. People are going to be so lost in their sin, they are going to curse God for punishing them for their sins. That's nothing new.
No.
We do it.
Yes.
Come on, we do it. Even after we got saved, didn't we do it a little bit?
Yeah.
We'd start doing something, we'd start walking down that straight path, we'd start to veer off and something would happen to us. It was a thing called conviction. The Spirit trying to correct us back onto the path. We didn't want to get corrected back on the path. We would curse God for showing us that we were wrong. So whenever we sit there and we read this stuff, think about it. It's no different than what we did before we came to know Christ and even sometimes after we came to know Christ. But the fourth trumpet sounds. And then it gets worse. As bad as this is as bad as what we're seeing, what we're reading here. And no matter how well we read this, do you still realize your imagination will never wrap your mind around this?
That's exactly right.
I mean, we won't. I mean, we'll sit here and we'll say, oh, I can see this, oh, I can envision this, oh, I can just see that kind of thing happen. No, you can't. Because we will never fully understand God's power. And it's going to be on full display. And if you are of the belief of the premillennial, you're not going to see this.
Right.
Amen.
You're not going to see it. You are going to be in a better place. This is why I don't understand, and many do, and maybe this is where I fall along some of the lines of what you were talking about what we were talking about this morning, of where we look at other points of views and we kind of judge them a little. You know, we were kind of talking about that. I think sometimes when it comes to these premillennial and postmillennials, I kind of get a little judgy on it. Because I sit there and I go, I don't understand how you think that God's people are going to be here for this. And I don't want to sit there and I catch myself in my mind going way too far with it. And I'll just tell you sometimes what's happening in my mind. I go, these people got to be stupid. But isn't that what we talked about this morning?
Well, to some degree though, if you take Bible symbolism, which some people want to put in here, Christ is the sun, the Spirit's the moon, the church is the stars, and they're existing during this period of time. And so they're trying to relate the two. I don't think they relate, but,
Right.
people try to do that.
Yeah, they absolutely do. And so, me, I see this and I read this and I try to wrap my mind around it. And as I do, and I try to imagine these things, I can't imagine the full display. But then I sit there and I go, I don't have to worry about it.
Right.
Amen.
You read that, you're in a maze.
Right. I don't have to worry about it.
Right.
But I worry about the ones that do.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
He loves everybody, that's why
Yeah.
we gotta think about how he feels about every person.
Right. Exactly. I mean, if we were honest with ourselves, and we need to have a little bit more of an urgency. We really do.
Yeah.
I think, and I'm not saying we got to get to the point where, there's that fine line of being urgent and being pressuring. But we almost have to figure out how to tread that line a little bit. Because if we're honest with ourselves, this can happen at any time. Any time. And think about the ones that I don't want to put us in a dark place or anything, but think about the ones that wouldn't be going with us. So this is geared, like I've said from the beginning, we're at the point now where we're geared toward the lost. But those that are not lost, those that are saved, should be reading this and going, there needs to be an urgency.
That's right.
Because if we can get a little bit of an understanding of what's going to take place, that should make us want to reach as many as possible before it's too late.
What does the Bible say? Will come in a twinkling of an eye.
Yep.
And Paul expected to go.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we, which are alive and remain,
That's right.
he was ready to go in that rapture
Exactly.
then.
I mean, if we trace this all the way back, from the day Jesus ascended back to heaven, people have been ready to go.
Yes.
They have been expecting to go. They've been expecting him because what he said. He said, I'll come back.
Yeah.
And from that point on, man has went, I'm ready.
Well, that's what they
So-
got on him a little bit, because they were just sitting there doing nothing,
Right.
waiting
Yes.
right after he
Yeah.
Yep.
ascended. Yeah.
That's absolutely right.
I'm waiting for you. Don't wait, he's coming.
Go out and
Yeah.
spread the word. Yeah.
All right, so let's do verse 13 here, and we'll wrap up the chapter. We kind of get a little bit of a break for a second with a very stern warning. If somebody would like to read verse 13.
And I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the three angels, which are yet to sound.
All right. Now, I'm not going to tell you which version of the Bible is correct. I own more than one version. But let me share some. Remember how we did the thing with Daniel? What does the King James say? Son of God. Where the NIV says he looked like the son of the gods. There are versions of the Bible out there that takes the word angel out right here and replaces it with the word eagle. There are others that replace it with the word vulture. Now, I believe that an angel flew through the midst of heaven with a loud voice, saying, "Whoa,
Yes.
whoa, whoa." I don't believe an eagle did it. I don't believe a vulture did it. I believe that an angel did it.
That's right. No crow does that.
Exactly. There was a warning from a heavenly messenger, and it's a threefold woe, which corresponds to our next three judgments that we will be getting into. You think that this is bad? What we've read so far? You think even go back to the six seals when they were opened up and the things that were happening there, and now we got an angel issuing a warning of woe.
That means
Yeah. The first four trumpet judgments were on the elements. They were on nature. God took out his judgment on that. The next 3 are going to be on humanity.
Yes.
Think about this. Jesus himself warned of this, and this is where a lot of people get the eagle translation or the vulture translation. Can we go to Matthew chapter 24? And it's going to be verse 28. This is where they get the eagle. I just want you to understand where they get it from. Jesus is speaking here. He says, "For wherefore the carcass is, there will be eagles gathered together." That word eagle can also be translated vulture.
Yeah.
I still hold the course that if God wanted it to be eagle or vulture, John would have wrote that.
Yes.
Just like eagle was wrote in Matthew.
Exactly. There's a difference. An angel is speaking and giving warning, and he's giving warning because death is coming.
Also, it talks about the feeding of the.
Yeah.
You know, if you think about it too, angels have been being used by God all this time.
That's right.
And angels, and when you read of angels, angels apparently hold the ability to have compassion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure an eagle or a vulture has that
Exactly.
in them.
That's exactly it.
But the angels are usually found sounding some kind of a warning too.
Correct. Yes.
The angels are servants.
But that's how this chapter ends, with a stern warning to all people that are still here. Death is on the way. We're approaching what will be a very tragic series of events, mixed in with some very glorious series of events. When you look at this and think about this, we have the 5th and the 6th trumpet will sound, then the little book is revealed, and then the 2 witnesses appear at the wall. And God shows his power through all of it. We are getting to a point where we're going to start seeing the bottomless pit, what the Bible calls the bottomless pit, opened up. And now that phrase, bottomless pit, it does translate into hell will be opened.
Yes.
You think times are bad now. Imagine when that takes place. But that will be coming. And it'll actually be to a point that it's going to be where men are going to want to kill themselves, and they will not be able to.
Right.
Because God will carry his judgment. A lot of people go back and go, well, I don't understand why God would do something like this. Think back. What is one of the things that people like to misquote all the time? Vengeance is mine, thus saith the Lord. God gets the final say.
He does.
We have to understand that. And that's what God is going to get here. He's going to get the final say. Because we are coming to the point where God will judge. See, he's carrying out judgments, but God still is not judging anyone. Do we understand that?
Yeah.
He has not issued his judgment on people yet. He hasn't got to that. He is judging. He's carrying out his judgment, but there is still a judgment yet to come.
People ask why he would do that. You know, we always have the answer, you know, well, this is just leading up to the heaven and hell scenario, and we know that God doesn't send anybody to hell, you've chosen that.
Yeah.
But I think about when people say, well, why is he doing this? you know, you got to think about the other side of it too. This is also happening because he promised something to the follower of Christ, and for that to get to the place it needs to be and give us the full victory that he's promised us, the other side's got to happen too.
Right. Exactly.
Keep forgetting, we are the creators. We do not create God. He can do whatsoever with his creation.
Right.
He has that right.
But the thing of it is too, he's still trying to reach people out of his love.
Yes.
He's not killing everybody yet.
Exactly.
He's getting ready to. but
Right.
He's not
He's
yet.
not at that point yet where he's killing everyone.
And he's still, you know, he's like, it's like, boy, if you don't go clean your room, you're gonna be really, really sorry.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yep.
And it's not that people don't have a conscious mind that tells them about God.
Right.
We had a missionary speak in one of our churches some years ago. Said they went into a village and they gave the message, and as soon as they were done, the first time that any white man had stepped into the village, and the chief came up to him and said, "I'm so glad you came. I've always known about him, but I never knew his name before." And this is way back in the
Right.
middle of Africa.
Yeah.
And so people have that conscious
Yes.
mind,
Right.
Mhm.
Yep.
and so they're inexcusable.
That's absolutely it. I mean, people have that conscious mind.
Mhm.
They just need introduced.
That's
That's
what
exactly what it is.
Paul speaks on that. They're gonna be judged by the heart when they don't know their understanding, because they have an inherent understanding of good and wrong, right and wrong.
I think what you're seeing too, to take another part of the Bible where it talks about sifting the wheat. This is what's happening. It's the final, you know, like when you do that and you start shaking it down, you might have a big whole bunch of it and it's getting down to the end. It's getting down to the end. And I think that's what for him to give us what he's promised us, he's got to separate sin,
Right.
man and sin from the glorious side of things. And that's what he's doing this separation. The people are choosing, but he's doing the final separation here, and the ones in the end that choose not to go the right way, that's just it. It's the final, it's the end of times.
That's right.
Yep. You choose. You choose.
You choose. That's exactly it. It all comes down. Billy Graham, one of his most powerful messages, in my opinion, was when he got on choices. And he said, everybody makes a choice. Every day we must make a choice. And he was preaching on, choose you this day who you will serve. And that's what we have to do every day. Every day. But really, you have to choose that every minute. Every minute you have to decide who are you going to choose. Which side. And your choices have eternal implications.
If you, well, we'll say what the pets are preached on today. You know, that's the very thing with the virgins. They get to where, you know, they get to where they fall asleep
Mm-hmm.
or just sort of go to
Didn't
sleep.
put oil on their lamps.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it happens.
And
You gotta wake that part of people up.
honestly, what he's doing for the people who are going to curse him, for the people that ask why he's doing what he's doing, you know, he's actually doing them a favor.
Yeah.
Because he could have just ended this without the continued
Right.
warnings of as how he's narrowed this down till we get to the end. He could have just said, "That's it. You haven't decided,
Yeah.
or you have decided, basically, and that's it." But by doing these things, even though some people are going to suffer, he's given every last chance in showing you more and more of his power as it goes on and what he is in control of.
One of the things I often ask people when they start using the name of the Lord in vain, if you don't believe in God, why do you curse him?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
So next week, we will be in chapter 9. We will get through 2 trumpets. Next week, maybe. We should be through 2. I really would encourage you to study this. This is going to tie a little bit into some of the stuff that Brother Dennis was talking about this morning. on that word apocalypse, which the word, I forget now which word they translate that, but it doesn't actually mean destruction. It means unveiling. Well, you're going to learn, if you study chapter 9, and you will do this, you're going to learn the Greek word and the Hebrew tongue, or the Hebrew word for destruction. They're in here. And you also see why a lot of people think apocalypse means destruction, because of the closeness of the Greek translation. But I do encourage you to study this as we go into next week. Business is about to pick up.
You know,